Rimuru Tempest, the newly dubbed Chancellor of the Jura Forest Federation, goes head-to-head with Gazal Dwargo, the leader of the dwarves, and a very snappy dresser. That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime returns for the next major story arc of the series, and that's made even more apparent because there is a brand new intro for the series, which I think is not as good as the first. I have to be perfectly honest, just, a first impression, I don't like the song as much, I don't like the animation as much, I don't know. Maybe it's because there's a lot of things that I just don't know. There's a lot of brand new characters who are introduced in this intro, some of which who briefly appeared in the last, and I was kind of hoping that maybe their stories would get to be seen before that, but no, they're like, hey, see all these cool characters? See Rimuru fighting this guy with a sword in the intro? Yeah, you're not going to get to see that yet. Did that come to fruition? Hell no. I don't like when intros do that, and even though I didn't like that it did it in the first intro, I loved the song, I loved the energy, I loved the introduction to all of the characters. It was how I viewed the show for the very first time. It's what sort of brought me into the awesomeness that is That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime. So I'm not going to dwell on the intro that much longer. What I will say is, it still is very well animated, it's catchy, and it's going to get you pumped up for the show. So it does the show justice. It's just not as good as the first one, in my opinion. Also, it totally gives away some big details, like the fact that Gabiru, the former leader of the Lizard Men, who is now basically disgraced and exiled from his village, is going to receive some form of an upgrade. It looks like he's actually going to be renamed by Rimuru, and apparently that's going to give him the upgrade of transforming into a half-man, half-dragon. Basically, it's just Gabiru with wings. You can even see in the ending that even his teammates are going to get this upgrade, but it also turns him purple for some reason. Basically, he becomes Ridley from Metroid. I'm excited to see where that's going to go, and hopefully it'll make him a more competent sort of fighter, but I imagine he's still going to be the same old Gabiru, which is to say he's going to be a lovable douche. But let's get to the thing that all the kids love, politics. Politics, yes, they made the Star Wars prequels movies good, and they're gonna make this good too. I only jest a little bit, but there's some pretty big details that go down in this episode, like the fact that the Lizard Men and the Orcs are going to be forming an alliance with Rimuru, which effectively means his army just got this much fucking bigger. It's crazy. They're actually building like their very own town now to house all of these brand new people. We even get to see that the Orc Disaster's right-hand man, Geld, yes, that's going to be his name because they, can't think of any others. He looks like he's going to be joining the group and he's going to be pretty damn important. He even squatches his shit with the ogres, which is pretty freaking cool. We also get some development from the evil villains of the series, like Demon Lord Clayman. He looks like he's going to be the first major villain of the series. A very aristocratic vampire-looking fellow who has a group of henchmen who are all clownish and ridiculous, like that one who was actually hanging out with Gelmid a couple episodes ago. I also think he has the voice of Zoro from One Piece, and if that's true, man is that distracting. But the biggest development in this episode is that Gazal Dwargo has decided, you know what, let's go see what this slime is all about. I'm going to challenge him myself. And they make this big grand entrance, just riding on these horses that are flying through the sky. They arrive all covered in this pristine armor, and he's like, hey, where Rimuru at? We gonna fight. And fight they do, and honestly, it's pretty damned awesome. Honestly, I still think that Rimuru would absolutely just wipe the floor with him, but Gazal still manages to actually sort of push him back just a little bit. They do say that Rimuru is the winner, but still it is kind of hard to say. There is always the possibility that he could have come back. This leads to something pretty sweet, which is the fact that Gazal and his entire freaking kingdom are actually going to form an alliance with Reamer, which is just going to make them even stronger, as basically he builds his very own monster kingdom. So what's the rundown on this episode of That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime? So much to say about this episode, but I really just don't have the time to do that. I have to be honest with you guys, I'm on a very tight schedule. What I will say is I loved how this episode just sort of got right through the epilogue of this arc right here, just sort of wrapping up everything from the last arc and immediately moving into the next major story, especially with the promise of seeing so many brand new characters who are in the intro and the outro. I'm so pumped to see how this is all eventually actually going to play out. There's a lot of really big details about this episode that I want to go into a little bit more, but still, I think the big highlights are the ones that I already talked about. Gazal versus Rimuru was really exciting, and I'm really glad that Gazal didn't end up being just sort of like a douchey villain. He seemed like that was sort of the direction that he was going with originally, but after seeing the raw power that he and the Kijin were able to display against the Orc army, it's pretty obvious he's like, yeah, we probably shouldn't fuck with these guys, but let's just check, just to make sure. Also, one of the big themes of the series, which is growth and development, I think is one of the coolest things about this episode right here. It seems like every other episode, Rimuru's like family, army, kingdom, whatever you want to call it, just continues to just get so massive with the introduction of so many new characters. It's amazing that he started out trapped in a cave, met a bunch of goblins who lived in a really shitty village, and now they're quite literally building what is going to be a small city. It's insane, and it's really awesome watching it unfold on screen, especially because Rimuru himself has such a charismatic personality, even if a lot of the time it's not something that he actually intends. It's just, that's just the sort of energy that he actually exudes, and it brings in all of these really interesting and strong people. I'm giving this episode a 4 out of 5. Brand new intro, lots of hype, introduction of a brand new villain, solid stuff all around. Check it out. If any of you did watch the episode, tell me what you thought about it in the comment section below, and what you hope to see from the rest of that time I got reincarnated as a slime. As it turns out, I did not have an opportunity to do this edit before the next episode came out, so you know what? You guys are going to be getting 2 episode reviews today, and this one is a lot more interesting than the last. Not only just setting up the major story arcs, but also introducing a brand new character. A character who I think is going to make massive waves in that time I got reincarnated as a slime. So this episode, again, sort of reestablishes what's happening after this big battle with the Orc disaster. It sent this sort of like ripple throughout this massive fantasy world, and people are starting to take notice. Not just, of course, Gazal Dwargo, who is now an official part of the Jura Forest Federation, but we now also have the Demon Lords, who are finally starting to come out of the woodwork. And I'm still not quite sure what to make of these characters. Are they good? Are they bad? Are they villains? Are they heroes? Or are they something in between? Not black, not white, maybe more in the gray. And that's because they introduced this brand new character who goes by the name of Milim Nava, who is this very unassuming, super cute little girl who happens to be a very old and super powerful demon lord. She just sort of like appears out of nowhere, like a freaking rocket just coming out of the sky with a massive pink explosion. I loved the scene because it instantly reminded me of watching Dragon Ball Z, because Rimuru instantly knew that something really powerful was heading this way, a power that he's never felt before, and then suddenly, like a giant pink comet, she just explodes into the ground. And she comes across as a villain at first, but by the end of the episode, she ends up becoming the ally of Rimuru and his entire brand new kingdom. Reluctantly for some, but Rimuru is okay if it means they're going to have someone really powerful on their side. And when I say powerful, I mean that Milim might very well be the most powerful being that we've seen in the series. She actually addresses herself as this being which is called a dragonoid, which I'm assuming maybe she has some dragon powers, maybe she's half human, half dragon, maybe she even has some sort of connection to Veldora. I think that that would be pretty cool, but both her and Rimuru have a battle of sorts, which basically starts off with all of the Kijin and the ogre coming in and trying to like take her out, but it does absolutely nothing. Even when getting like tied up with Soei's thread, and then even Benimaru coming in and hitting her with like this big blast of black fire, it doesn't even hurt her at all. She just like laughs off the entire attack. Even Reamer realizes this chick is really freaking powerful, and he realizes that he might not even be able to defeat her, so he decides to take her out in another fashion. Instead of using any crazy magic attacks, he simply just gives her some honey. He gives her a snack, and because of her childlike nature, she just decides that if she wants to continue to eat more of this, she can't fight against this guy. She's reluctantly going to have to join him, and that's what ends up happening. She ends up becoming a part of Rimuru's forces, and not necessarily like, you know, like a budding happy member like the other people. Really, she's just there to sort of appease herself, but also I think there's a lot of curiosity from her character. Like, she's shocked to actually see someone in this this world, who's not a demon lord, who's super powerful, but can actually defeat creatures which are on damn near the same level. There's something that has piqued her curiosity overall, and her childlike inquisitiveness is ultimately what sort of, I think, drives her to this point. That, and of course, she seems to be quite smitten with Rimuru himself, like many of the other female characters in the series. And it seems like a lot of the goblins in the village and everybody else seems to know a lot about who this girl is. Apparently, she's very famous, she's a very powerful demon lord, and one that you don't want to piss off. She has no qualms with actually displaying her ravenous personality. She even goes as far as to punch Gabiru in the face when she gets called a little girl. And speaking of Gabiru and all of the other lizard men, they get a massive upgrade in this episode, which of course was completely spoiled in the brand new intro, but there was one aspect of it that I did not expect. First and foremost, the female members of the lizard men, in particular Gabiru's sister and all of her attendants, they get the big upgrade. They all get names, and unlike Gabiru and his other followers, they don't just gain wings in a brand new color scheme. They quite literally transform into different beings, and they basically all turn into super hot anime chicks, except for the two male characters. And this is a really interesting prospect, as apparently sometimes when he names them, they can have completely different forms than the other people of their race. Basically, I think they just wanted an excuse to turn Gabiru's sister into a hot anime character. And you know what? It absolutely worked. But Gabiru, of course, is still pretty much exactly the same, except that now he's a dragon newt, so he is purple, he has longer horns, and of course those distinctive dragon wings. But the good thing is, he's still pretty much the same exact character, but he has a brand new role in the series as he's officially a part of Rimuru's crew, and it looks like he's actually going to be doing all of these crazy potion experiments in the caves. And that's not the only character they decided to bring back. They even bring back Vesta, who was the prime minister from Gazal kingdom, the guy who had a lot of big quarrels with Kaijin, and I had a feeling they were going to do something else with this character. I just didn't expect that it was going to be this. I felt that Vesta was going to be very vindictive and try to get back at Rimuru and all of his friends and come up with some sort of big crazy revenge plan, and that could still potentially happen, but Gazal drags him to Rimuru personally and says, "You're gonna work for him now." And that's exactly what Vesta is going to do. He's going to be creating and mass-producing all of these healing potions, which is going to be very important not only for healing people, but for the economy of Rimuru's village. And I just didn't expect that character was going to return in some sort of capacity, so I can't wait to see more from him, and hopefully they can develop him as more than just a general douchebag. What I do think is kind of funny is that, like, all of the characters that are basically kind of dicks have all been tossed into the cave, so that's kind of funny. So, what's the rundown on this episode of That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime? Big developments in this episode, as Rimuru effectively gained even more teammates, not only from Gabiru and the Lizard Men, but who would have thought that Vesta would return, and of course, the arrival of Milim Nava, the very first Demon Lord of the series to fully make her presence known. We've seen hints of these characters before, like Leon Cromwell, who's still a complete and utter mystery, and of course there is Clayman, who's been shown a couple of times in the series, but not really doing anything, just sort of hanging out, drinking wine, and being overall very smug. It's very obvious that they're trying to get some tabs on Rimuru, and that's why Milim has decided to actually investigate herself, but I don't know what their overall plan is. I'm still not even quite sure what role the Demon Lords actually play in the series. I mean, the name itself, Demon Lord, makes them sound like they're probably going to be bad guys, but Milim actually seems like a very nice character. She seems like she genuinely wants to hang around with Rimuru and be in that village. She even decides to live there at the very end of the day. But again, there could be ulterior motives for this girl. I will also say that her design has got to be the most anime of the entire show. I mean, I know that seems a little redundant to say this is an anime series, but like her overall design, it is just anime to the max. It's Lolita fan service at its finest. The chick is barely wearing anything. There are ass shots galore here, and of course she's a really young looking girl, so it makes you feel like a creep. But again, she's a super old, super powerful demon lord, so we have to assume that she's probably been around for a very long time. It's just funny that we have another female who's here to try and gain Rimuru's love. Maybe that's not the way it's gonna go. Maybe she actually doesn't see him in that way. We get to see that Shion is a little threatened in this episode, and speaking of fan service, what about that frickin' hot spring scene? Holy crap. As big as your head. So the ball is officially rolling on That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime. Not only is the next major story arc beginning, but they are introducing a deluge of brand new characters who are all really awesome and very distinctive in their own ways. I'm excited to see what the second half of the season is going to deliver. It's very easy to see why this show is so popular. There are just so many amazing characters, and the world itself is growing with every single episode. Also, I just can't wait to see more of these demon lords in action because Milim in this episode was fucking cool, man. She just arrived creating giant craters and destruction. She is like a character from Dragon Ball. It's just so damn cool. So there it is. That's my thoughts on that episode as well, which is why I'm going to give this one a 5 out of 5. You guys definitely need to check it out. I would love to get your thoughts about this episode. What did you think of Gabiru in his brand new form, his sister transforming into a hot anime chick, the return of Vesta, and what about Milim Nava? Do you like her character? Do you not like her character? Do you have any theories as to where this whole Demon Lord story is going to be going? What do you want to see from the rest of That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime? Thank you all for watching this review. I'll see you all next time, and as always, stay down there, baby. Rimuru Tansis?